That basic, they don't do anything that Borderlands guns do. They just do what guns in our world do, and that is just shoot bullets, and that's it. They don't do anything cool. They bring a flamethrower into this movie, and I just sat there and I went, there has never been a flamethrower you can pick up in Borderlands and use, because you shoot an SMG that shoots flaming bullets. I just went like, how did the creators...
It neuters, it's like the swearing and the blood. It's like another aspect is neutered to be really, really generic.
Yes. Yeah. The action is... And there's an action sequence, and this is when I thought it was going to happen. I was like, oh, okay, they sneak down into this lair, and it's a warehouse. And there's all these crates. They're going to open up the crates, and we're going to get guns from the game. And just little, like, hey, little fun references, but you can be really creative. And it's like, they have to shoot their way out of this hideout because they got caught. But, like, they do with all these wacky guns, and that's how they're able to overcome the horde. Nope! They just kill people. They just do it. And it's just like, oh, okay. They don't even have the characters all have special abilities in the game. Like, let's go with Kevin Hart's character, Roland. He has a sentry turret that he gets to deploy, and it does cool stuff. He doesn't do it in the movie. Krieg is supposed to become this big, gigantic dude and grow, like, one big arm, and the other arm becomes small, and he throws people around. He also is supposed to blow himself up with dynamite, and he comes back together. And it's just like, he's supposed to do, like, all this cool stuff because he's actually, like, a mutant. They don't do that in the game. Tiny Tina doesn't even really, like, she holds a rocket launcher but doesn't use it, which it's like, okay, that's cool. She throws dynamite, but it's like, come on, man. This girl is known for giving off explosions. There were so many times I was sitting there watching this movie, and I just thought to myself, how the hell do you have the creators who have made billions off these games? How the hell do you have them there? And they just decided, this is fine. We can give this to the fans. This will kickstart our Borderlands cinematic universe, as Randy Pitchford said, which I don't know what the hell you were planning to do with that, Chief, because what the hell is a cinematic universe in Borderlands? Did you just go from Borderlands 1 to 2? What the fuck is this? It frustrated me to no end, and when you get to the climax of this movie, it made me roll my eyes and just go, man, you guys really had nothing here. And I feel so bad for everyone involved, because I really, as much as, like, some fault does fall onto the writers, the performers, the directors, both of them, Roth and Tim, I really can't hold them as, like, I can't hold them as accountable as I hold the producers of this movie, because it just felt like they came in and royally messed up this movie. This is just a disaster to me on every level. And I, of course, feel this way more passionately because I know the blueprint. I've played the blueprint. I can write out the blueprint for you for this damn movie. And you just
telling normies. It's like you have to tell normies. It's like, no, I promise the game is so much better. It's so good. Like, guys, come on. It's like when your thing is finally represented in the even more mainstream or a new audience, right? Because obviously Borderlands very mainstream, but it's like, yeah, guys, it can do better. It's done better.
And
guys, just play the game.
It's worse even when you find out, like, the writer of Chernobyl and The Last of Us was attached to this, and he begged to get his writing credit taken off of it. I can't blame him. It's just like, look at how this thing turned out. It is terrible. This movie probably has so much on the editing room floor that might make it more coherent, and to me, maybe a decent flick. And it stands out even more now of how bad it is when lately we've had stuff like Sonic the Hedgehog 2, The Last of Us, the Fallout TV show, the Super Mario Brothers movie, where it's like you have these things, whether they played it as safe as Super Mario or they did their own thing like Fallout, but still played like,
live and online. It's Sleepless with Steve and the Movie Book Club with your host, Steve Pulaski.
Back and better than ever, it is Sleepless with Steve live on YouTube on this Wednesday evening, wherever you may be, however you may be listening. We come to you live and in living color. It is the Gruesome Twosome today with a very symmetrical background right here now, too. A very symmetrical background. Are we side by side on the feed? I don't have the feed up guiltily. Are we side by side? Okay, yeah. So this is really like symmetry right here. I'm a big symmetry guy, and this is very nice. This is very cool. And it fits. I can imagine you chose this because it fits the movie we're talking about.
It does, and I thought it'd be funny if we actually had the same background for that very reason.
I love this background. I think it's sweet. Yeah, we were talking Alien Romulus today, and that's going to be our big thing today. That's going to be our big topic. No real news broke. The only thing, and I haven't watched it yet, but I want to acknowledge it because I think this movie is going to be the biggest Hot Mess Express passion project since Warren Beatty's Rules Don't Apply, which I think 12 people saw. I saw the trailer. I didn't watch the trailer, but I saw that the trailer for Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis dropped.
Yes.
And I saw it took a lot of film shots at film critics because the movie was not very well received at Cannes. And when it premiered. So this movie, you know what I saw too, and this was just in the comments. Film critic Matt Singer wrote about it. And this was in the Facebook comments. I didn't know this. I need to do more reading on this movie because it comes out, I think, next month. I need to do a little bit more reading. Because the last time I really did was when it was in the festival circuit. You know, it's fucking hilarious. I guess Coppola sold like $120 million worth of his vineyard to finance this movie.
Yeah, this movie is very much a self-finance thing, and it's a hefty price, I believe. I believe it, you have like people like Shyamalan who, he's funding his own movies, but he's keeping budget low. And you have Francis Ford Coppola, who I think is nearing the $100 million mark with this. And it's
I think he's over.
He's probably over.
Well over.
Honestly, he's probably over with the cast he has and how long he's been shooting this fucking thing. That this thing will probably be over 100 million. Maybe 150 by the time it comes out with marketing and everything. Because I remember, it took them forever to find a studio that wanted to actually take this thing on. Because a lot of studios were worried, okay, yeah, we'll take on and market this heavy price of a movie, and we know it's only going to probably make 20 million at the box office, and we're going to lose a ton of money. So it took forever to find a studio that was just willing to put up with possibly a loss on their hand.
It's true. It's going to be a loss. I tell you right now, this movie's going to make 7 million opening weekend.
Probably.
I wish I probably don't because I would lose more money on DraftKings than I already do. I wish DraftKings had a box office tab because I'm serious. If the over under was 10 million opening weekend for Megalopolis, I'd take the under. And I'm not saying it's going to be a bad movie. I don't know. But these fucking passion projects, they never do well. They're always too expensive. Oh. They cater to a small sector of the populace. Warren Beatty's Rules Don't Apply. Now, I don't think that movie came out in 2016. I don't think that movie would get a theatrical release today. That's probably how much the landscape has changed. I think it would go to Netflix. Silence, Martin Scorsese's movie, did okay, but I still think that lost money. That was another movie that was in development for 30 years.
It did okay. It's a great movie, too. It's one of my favorite films he's made recently, honestly.
That's a great movie.
I know a lot of people talk about all the other gangster type ones he's done recently, but it's man, I really love Silence. But the issue with Silence was, yeah, man, it was in development hell. Not development hell necessarily, but just trying to get a fucking studio to finance the damn thing. And then when he finally got it and all, it was in 3 theaters by me. And I had to go to Chicago to watch it.
Yeah, and I remember it came out on such a crowded weekend. Same with Rules Don't Apply. The other thing that sucked about Rules Don't Apply, I remember that came out over Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And I'm way to bury this thing. Completely. And this is going to be, and I'm I guarantee this will be the last Warren Beatty movie we ever get because it took so damn long. It was already his first movie in 18 years. The other thing I just want to mention, I don't know if I sent this to the Sleepless chat, but I remember weeks ago, Catherine and I were talking about film that we got in a big kind of one-on-one discussion about film distribution and rights and money and just a bunch, just a chat. And I saw a great video. I showed it to her. I should send it to you guys. It was Matt Damon on Hot Ones talking about
Yes.
Talking about how the loss of the DVD sales
Yeah.
has contributed to or has impacted the kind of movies that get made nowadays.
Yep.
And it's an excellent, because basically his gist was, you sound like you've seen it. I won't go long.
I love Hot Ones. I watch Hot Ones all the time. So
I don't watch a ton of it, but I watch like, it's one of those like piecemeal things I watch. And he had a great commentary. He was talking about the movie Behind the Candelabra, the Liberace movie. And he was talking about how, like, in the 90s, that movie would have been made, because he's like, studios were far less concerned about what they made opening weekend, because you would get the money back. On DVD sales and VHS sales and rentals and shit. He's like,
that was the thing. Blockbuster usually bailed out a lot of movies that bombed at the box office, because
Tremors.
like VHS was like a second home for a lot of movies, cult classics. That's usually how they were discovered. It's because of Blockbuster and everything. You take away that, and now the landscape has changed.
It's deeply unfortunate that the studios have not found a way for these movies to have a second act, because like I feel like there's a reason they don't release the rental numbers on Vudu when things are like $20. I have a feeling they don't release those because I feel like the figures are paltry. I feel like not a lot of people go for that when everybody's got subscription services. But he talked about, though, he said like he tried to get Candelabra made like to go to the theaters, and he's like, it's a $25 million movie. And I have to put that into P&A. I have to put that into print and advertising. So now I'm at $50 million. And then he's like, and the way he said it was really impacting. He's like, I love everybody in the movie, but that's a massive gamble. I have to make like $100 million to assure before we're in the black. And he's like, I don't see this gay, he didn't say it like that, but he's like, I don't see this like gay niche drama like making that kind of money. And he's right. And ultimately it went to HBO, because I remember I watched the premiere of it back then, and I just thought it was fascinating. And I feel like that's the challenge why you don't see movies like Megalopolis, which is going to be Megalopolis. It's going to be a hell of a time trying to pronounce that thing. But I feel like that's the reason these directors have such a hell of a time now. And why, like, Scorsese's like, shit, Apple's going to give me $200 million to make Killers of the Flower Moon. Why wouldn't you jump at that? Because Apple will at least give you more of a theatrical distribution than most.
And I look at now, the streaming platforms are where you go now, as an auteur like Scorsese or Coppola. They're now the platform you go to be like, hey, I want to do this passion project. I will give you the streaming rights to it if you put me in theaters at least for like a month or the 2 weeks thing.
And I don't think that's going to be around forever either. I think that's going to have a shelf life soon too, because I do not understand how that's profitable for Apple.
Yeah, like I mean,
Jesse Plemons' line. How could that be profitable for Frito-Lay?
Well, when we're in the old folks' home, you and I, and we're sitting there with Dom, and we're in front of the TV, we'll be like, let's watch that fucking Killers of the Flower Moon again. And when we go on Apple TV, we'll soon find out that 20 years ago it was removed off, actually, because guess what? No one gave a shit about the movie at that point on Apple TV.
and then we'll be doing Sleepless with Steven. Will really be Sleepless, and I'm like, Cooper Rife got a $5,000 deal to make 10 TikToks.
And that's the other thing too. I mean, god damn it, stop, man. The more I'm in space, the less focus I have. When you have something like, fucking what happened with, like, CBS Now and all these other streaming services that kind of folded, what's going to happen when we eventually reach that point? I know they're the giants now, but like, what's going to happen? If Netflix eventually does bite the bus, or Apple TV bites the dust as well, and then you're just like, what happens to Martin Scorsese's Killer of the Flower Moon? Like, it's just not streaming anywhere else? Does it get sold to another studio? How is Martin Scorsese's, like, at that time, by that happens, it's going to be his like family taking over probably that side of the business and everything. But yeah,
his estate.
It is estate. Thank you. I couldn't remember the word for it. Yeah, man, it's gonna be a whole fucking mess of a deal when it comes to that stuff.
This will serve as our kind of, off-topic news thing.
I was gonna say, we basically made a news topic.
No, the last thing I'll mention was I had a great conversation with Corey Edwards last week, the director of Hoodwinked. I had a great conversation with him, and we talked about Hoodwinked and VeggieTales. He's worked on that before and stuff, and a couple of his new projects. And we were talking about it, though, because I was just deeply fascinated about how Hoodwinked got made. And one of the questions I had, because the whole thing started kind of going back to the conversation Catherine and I had, I was looking up movies that weren't on streaming that you cannot find anywhere. I'm talking you can't even rent the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And Hoodwinked is one of them. And I started thinking like, or we were talking about how Dogma is probably the most famous movie that's not available.
Yeah.
And we were talking about like, I think like what's the commonality between Hoodwinked and Dogma? They're both Weinstein movies, and they're both Miramax movies.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked Corey, I said, why is Hoodwinked not streaming? And he's like, I can kind of answer that. He said, the problem is he said, when the Weinstein Company and Miramax, because Miramax is still around in name, but he said when the Weinstein Company folded and imploded, he said that left a lot of movies like rights kind of dangling and like the gray area. And he's like, now some studios that like worked with Miramax and the distribution, like some defaulted to Paramount, some defaulted to like Viacom, you know what I mean? Some went elsewhere. He said the problem with Hoodwinked is he said there were 3 investors: Harvey Weinstein, Bob Weinstein, and another investor he didn't name, but that third-party investor died earlier this year.
Oh, shit. Okay.
And so he said, he's like, it's in limbo. And he's like, I can't do anything. He's like, it sucks. And I told him, I said, it sucks because you're practically invisible if you're not on streaming. And I said, this movie, I guarantee you, would be popular in the top 10 if it were on Hulu or Netflix.
I loved Hoodwink as a kid. I wish I had a fucking bootleg DVD of Hoodwink. I'm so sorry to the director if you're watching this, but I did go see it in theaters and everything too. It's the reason why I had a bootleg of it is because I love the movie so much. I wanted to go see it again as a kid. I just thought it was so funny that my dad, the place he was working at the time, there was a guy that had a bunch of bootleg shit. And I mean, it was a VHS camcorder, but like, awesome. I got to watch Hoodwinked like whenever I wanted. Yeah, man, no, Hoodwinked was like one of my favorite movies growing up. I thought it was such a funny idea of like, the whole Little Red Riding Hood and all that stuff. Like, they played with it so good.
Yeah, so I thought that was just interesting though, because yeah, if you look up, there's quite a few movies. I can't think of any more off the top of my head. I remember reading through the list, but like there's a lot of movies that like fell through the cracks, like
I bet, yeah.
And a lot of them are Weinstein movies. I bet you that movie, that really shitty animated movie Dougal, which we actually talked about too. He did a voice for that. I bet you that's sure as shit that's not available either. I just looked, and that was a Weinstein movie too.
Yeah,
sure as shit that's not available either. Anyway, we got derailed there, but it was cool to talk about that kind of thing. It was cool to chat.
Yeah,
no. about that.
Anytime we don't have Dom here, it's like you and I will just like go down our pipe hole or rabbit hole of just movie drama and like what we think about the industry. And then when you're not here and it's me and Dom, we just nerd the fuck out.
It is what it is. I mean, gruesome twosome, man. We got to break some rules here. I mean, the good news is we got the rest of the 45 minutes or so to talk about Alien Romulus. Okay, it's a brand new movie. Fede Alvarez directed it. I got to be honest, it was you and Dom, and which is ironic because he's not even here. You guys, I wasn't sure if I was going to see this movie because I'm going to be completely honest with you. I'm not the biggest fan of the Alien franchise. I'm really not. I like the first. I mean, the first one's an absolute indisputable classic. I like the second movie. I didn't see Alien 3. I didn't see Resurrection. I never saw AVP or Requiem. I never saw those two. And then I came back for Prometheus and Covenant. I think the next movie, I probably will marathon them and re-review the first two.
Okay.
Like, I think I'll probably do that. I should have done it for this one, but I was on a time.
I should make a road trip out. Let's make a road trip out and like watch them with you just to see your reaction to a few.
Loan me the quadrilogy.
if I may, I'm kind of in a similar boat with you. Other than I've seen everything you haven't seen. I think the first one is amazing. I think it's an amazing horror film. I think it's absolutely fantastic. The second one, and I get shit from people about this all the time. I like it a lot. I think it's a great action film. But I think the first one made the alien way scarier. And then when you have the Marines, like, taking them down left and right and all this other stuff, they're not as threatening anymore. They are still scary and everything, but it's more of an action movie. 3, I don't like, but, it's not as bad as some people make it out to be. It is bad, but like some people call it the worst one. Resurrection to me is the worst one. Both AVP movies, I think, kind of stink. PG-13 one's okay. with its action, but other than that, it's so convoluted. Prometheus I thought was fun. It was cool to get Ridley Scott to do something like that again. I don't like Covenant at all, and we'll talk about this one now.
The one thing I will say, first things first, that's funny. Alien versus Predator I just saw is on Disney Plus, which is very fun, which is very funny to me. And the other thing I will admit, even though I didn't, like I said, I didn't see it. I remember because it came out the same year as the SpongeBob movie. And I remember as a kid, that was the year I went to the theater way more often with my uncle and my mother. That was like the year where I went to the theater maybe like 6 times, which for like an 8-year-old's a lot. But I remember the poster of that movie, and I love the tagline because it said, "Whoever wins, we lose."
Yeah.
I thought that was funny. I remember even as a kid, like getting the dark humor of that. And then I remember even thinking as a kid too, because it came out the year before. I remember thinking Freddy versus Jason should have used that tagline.
Yeah.
That would have been great. Whoever wins, we lose.
And it sucks because that is such a badass poster. My uncles used to work at AMC.
It's a great poster.
And they had that poster in their room. They took it once the movie was out. They folded up. They put it in their bedroom. And I used to think, like, man, I can't wait to see that movie. I didn't see it as a kid. And I rented it from Blockbuster one night, and I watched it. I remember just sitting there as a kid going, this is kind of boring for a movie called Alien vs. Predator. Like, there's not much of a versus happening here.
I really wasn't initially planning on seeing this movie. I really wasn't.
Yeah.
But then you guys, like I said, Catherine wanted to see it. You guys wanted to see it. And I said, you know what? Fuck it. I said, we'll see it. I said, if nothing else, I want to see. And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, you know what? I like Fede Alvarez quite a bit. I think he's still a little underrated too, as far as horror directors are concerned. I don't think a lot of people give the Evil Dead 2013 movie a lot of credit. And I think that I'm not going to stand here. I'm not going to sit here and say it's a masterpiece. I like Rise more, but I think it was a pretty damn good remake, or a reboot rather.
I remember going to see that movie at midnight. That was the first Evil Dead movie I saw. I didn't see any other ones before that. And I remember the people I saw with gave the movie so much crap because of how it turned out to be more serious, more dramatic. And they were telling me what Evil Dead is supposed to be like. And I walked out, I'm like, all right, I don't think it was amazing, but like I really liked that movie. I had a lot of fun and everything. And like, no, let's go watch the original. You'll change your mind. And we watched the original, and I sat there when the movie ended. I'm like, guys, like this first movie you guys are showing me, you told me it's goofy, it's funny, it's more comedic. This first one's being played up pretty serious. They're like, okay, now we have to watch 2. And then I ended up loving 2. But then, like, by the end of the night, they showed me all 3 movies in one night. I watched 4 Evil Dead movies from 12 a.m. to 6 in the morning, basically. And, like, I turned to everybody, I'm like, this probably wasn't the best way to watch them, but I enjoyed all of them, including the one we saw in theaters tonight. And they still got mad at me.
I mean, I liked it. I still vividly remember that tree sequence.
Oh, it's so good.
And as nasty as it is, that tree sequence though, I remember even thinking like, this guy's got talent, the guy directing this. And then he did Don't Breathe. And Don't Breathe was really good.
Yeah.
It was really dark and weird. It's got a sick as fuck third act. Like,
it's got an insane twist that they did not have in the trailers. And it was like, what?
So I'm like, you know what? The thing was, I said, Alvarez is directing this. He also wrote it with Rodo Sayaguez, and Sayaguez was behind Evil Dead and Don't Breathe. So I'm like, okay, he took his homeboy with him too. Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm like, they got the Uruguayan brothers working on this movie, so I give it a watch, and I'm glad I did, because you know what? I'm gonna say this. I was kind of lukewarm on Prometheus. I liked Covenant a little bit more. I like this one the best of the 3, the best of the new 3. I think this movie is the closest to the spirit of the original Alien, but it is not handcuffed by it. And I think that is probably the best thing. I think that this movie, the other thing that's great about this movie is it's like the antithesis of a Marvel movie insofar that they got Alvarez to direct this, and Ridley did the last 2, but they got Alvarez to direct this, and it doesn't feel like they handicapped him and told him to like like he could not do his own thing, because his penchant for body horror is very much on display in this movie. And he really, I think, falls in love with like the grotesque creatures, the face huggers, this like doomy, miserable atmosphere in the movie, whether it's on land or on Romulus and Remus. And I think this is as great of a looking alien movie as we've gotten. And I think that the story here is just narrow enough or like confined enough to kind of make this spaceship like a playground in so many words too, which I appreciated.
Yeah, no, I'm echoing everything you're saying. This to me, this is what I've been wanting to see again in this franchise, is the horror aspect of it. I appreciate where Scott was going with Prometheus and Covenant, getting more into, the, theories of creation and, what religion is and everything. It's just, to me, they kind of got boring at times, especially for me, at least. I know you said you like Covenant more than Prometheus. I'm vice versa. Covenant, to me, there's a point in that movie they go into a cave and they're there for like almost the rest of the movie. And I just remember sitting there in theaters like, I really don't care what's happening here. Like, I understand what they're trying to do. I understand what Scott's trying to do here. I'm not really all about it. And then you get to the third act of that movie, and it becomes basically like a slasher film with the xenomorph, and I was like, I'm not bad. This isn't my thing. No, this is more of what I wanted to see. Like, let other directors come in like Cameron did. And I wish, what's his name? I wish David Fincher got this chance with 3. But let them come in and actually put their signature on this franchise. This is a horror franchise. Let them do their spin on it. James Cameron's known for his great action and everything. He did that with Aliens. Fede Alvarez comes in here, and yeah, he's known for his body horror. And it's on full display here, man. When the chestburster comes out of the first victim in this movie, it is gruesome, man. But also, the other staples to Fede Alvarez is, of course, and Steve was basically hinting at this as well, or even talking about this, is his sets. His sets are great, man. Like, he made the cabin in Evil Dead. Don't Breathe, they filmed inside of a house and everything. And with this, I mean, to me, this is the best he's done with the set so far. I mean, he really brought that classic look that those films are known for with their technology and like 80s sci-fi look. But also the colors, the shadows that are used. And, of course, the practicality with the creatures in this movie. Which, look, the face huggers, to me, they were always creepy and whatnot. But, like, they're there at the start and then they leave. The face huggers in this movie, they're almost the star of the show. Like, they are way more intimidating. And I got so giddy during one of the action sequences, which are amazing in this movie, by the way. They're very tense. Very much, I was, like, sitting up like, oh, shit. There's one that involves a room of face huggers. And one thing I love that Fede did is, I feel like so many other directors or so many studios are scared to do this with long-running franchises, something like Alien or Terminator, is letting a director come in and setting, like, new rules or, like, letting them play with the creatures and everything. The whole body temperature thing, I'm, like, thinking to myself, I'm like, I don't know if that's been established in the previous movies, but it's really cool that Fede is just doing what he wants with these things and making creative, intense action scenes out of them, or just very, very creepy, just adding to the creepy atmosphere. And it's a very unsettling scene, and I got so giddy just seeing all the face huggers. She'd be like practical ones, like little puppets moving around and everything. I'm like, they look scary, but it's like, it's cool to like notice too. It's like, they're so good looking practically that like, it actually looks like a real face hugger in the scene. It's not a CGI thing or anything. Like, it's probably touched up with CG in a little places, but like, this is so damn good, man. Everything directing wise here, I loved, man. Like, Fede Alvarez, like, he knocked it out of the park here. Like, he came in really well. You could tell he wanted to make this movie. It wasn't like, okay, I'll do this. He came in wanting to do something. Like you said, he brought Homeboy with him, and they crafted, I think, probably the best Alien movie since Aliens.
I can agree with a lot of what you're saying here. There's a lot to be proud of with this movie. I think one of the things that this movie does really well is that it does not let the mythology or sort of the complex nature of the series really get in the way of the enjoyment or the storyline. This is a very simple story. It's set 20 years after after Alien and 35 years prior to Aliens. It takes place in 2142. And it starts briefly on the planet Jackson, which I'm not gonna lie, I really liked the shit on Jackson.
I did too.
I like it was so dark and so miserable, and it's like lit by trash can fires, and I thought that was a really cool touch. Like you you could feel the depression sort of set in with that movie. When you're watching it and when you're on that planet. And then you're introduced really quickly to Kaylee Spaney's character, Rain, and then you have Andy, played by David Johnson, who I think plays a synthetic very well in this movie. I think he's very good.
They are the two best performances of the movie. They're the two, to me, they're my favorite characters in the film. I loved watching their relationship grow throughout the movie. It's not even growing. I just love what they actually do with it. Like there's a reveal that happens, and it's a really awkward reveal of like, oh, this is awkward. And I was like, okay, they're probably gonna play the drama with this, but instead they do something with Johnson's character, Andy, the synth. They do something with his character, and not only does David Johnson like give just a completely different performance halfway through this movie, it also I think just kind of flips now the like who's in power between his sister or his adopted sister or him, and it's just like, wow, this is really cool. Not only is like you guys are flipping now like his performance, but you're also flipping how the characters work with one another now, and it's like this is so sick. It was like my favorite part of the film is anytime they were on screen together, and they just, anytime like it was a sweet tender moment, whether they were like it's him at the beginning of this movie or him later on in this movie, I was just like, I'm loving everything I'm seeing on screen about this.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a pretty tight cast too. I just want to say one thing is that we didn't review it on the show. It might have been one of the best movies of the year that we didn't review on the show. Honestly, it was The Bike Riders, and the Bike Riders I remember got a lot of flack because like, and you could make the argument, but like it's set in Chicago. And the three leads in the movie kind of adopt like wildly different Chicago accents throughout the whole thing, which is amusing. Like it didn't bother me, like because it's Austin Butler, Tom Hardy, and Jodie Comer, and I thought it was funny though because I'm like, I can buy all three of these accents. Jodie Comer's was a little bit more Minnesotan, but the thing was, it was I heard it referred to by film critic Brett Arnold, who I've given love to on the show before. He said it was like the Chicago Accent Olympics. That ship, Romulus and Remus, I thought was like a symphony of different accents. Like I thought it was a symphony of which kind of threw me off a little bit because the two worst characters in the movie. The two worst characters I feel like are like both mush mouths in a way, and they kind of like chew their words.
Yeah.
So I had to like I was like, me and Catherine were joking. I'm like kill these people off because they're pieces of shit, but also because I'm having a hard time understanding them too. I'm like a face hugger just needs to come in at the right time. I didn't say their performances are bad. I'm just saying like. You kind of get like a cross exposure of accents here aboard this ship.
I'm in a similar boat with you though about the whole characters, and if I wanted to give like a criticism right now, other than Kaylee Spaney and Johnson, I thought everybody else in this movie, Isabella Merced, who I thought also gave a good performance, but here's the thing, everybody else other than those two characters, the main ones, Andy and Rain, I feel like they're just there to get killed. They're just deli meat for the aliens to slice up. Like, everybody else like doesn't get really a character to them at all. They barely get any screen time. They barely get any like growth whatsoever. There's somebody there, and you were hinting at it. He is a complete, total jag-off. And you're just waiting for him to go. And it's just like,
true.
And it's just like, it got so annoying though for me. Like, it was like, we're 25 minutes in, and it's like, they explain why he's so rude and mean, and I'm like, I get it, but like, dude, there comes a point when you're in a dangerous situation, and it's like, all right, drop the act, we need to focus. And he's still being a jagoff about all this. It's like, hey, guy, look, our plan isn't going according to plan. Can you just stay focused real quick?
No, it's true. It's nice though that this movie, nobody really derails the anchors of the movie. Nobody really derails Kaylee Spaney or David Johnson from really shining in this. Also, just we're butting up against the intermission. I just want to give love to one actress, Isabella Merced. I think she's good in this movie. The one thing I always feel compelled to mention whenever she's in a movie, though, is that because nobody saw this movie, and this movie is like not even remembered at all. It came out in 2019, and I saw it. I want to say I did see it in theaters, and I enjoyed the hell out of it. It's the live action adaptation of Dora the Explorer.
Dude,
Dora
I love the
Lost
golden.
City of Gold. Lost City of Gold.
Yeah, I love that movie, dude.
I didn't even know you saw it. That was a very solid movie that does not get a lot of love, and it's a lot like those movies that Disney made in like the 50s and the 60s, those adventure movies. The closest thing to it, I would say, when I remember watching it and reviewing it, Dora, was Journey to the Center of the Earth.
Yeah.
Or Journey to the Center of the World, the sequel, Mystery Island, the sequel. And it reminded me a lot of that movie. And it was like, I had the same reaction to it because I'm like, this is the kind of movie they don't make anymore that they used to make incessantly, like in the Swiss Family Robinson type era.
And dude, like, I mean, that movie to me too reminds me so much of like when Nickelodeon was making those live action movies, and like, we're kind of like poor budgets and everything. But it's like this one, it's like, wow, they had like so much creativity went into it. But then you get this lead performance from Isabella Merced, and she's just charming as hell, man.
That movie was so much better than it had any right to be.
Yeah.
Nobody saw it. I don't think it did. It didn't really bomb, but it didn't do really well. There's a reason we haven't gotten Dora 2.
Yeah.
And like, I feel like it came and went and nobody remembers it or talks about it. But every time I see Isabella Merced, I'm like, you deserve more praise for that Dora movie that people ignored. That was just a name only, but like that was so much better than its reputation deserves. But we'll come back here in just a couple of minutes, talk Romulus. Shout out to Joe for also creating an awesome clip show to serve during the Zoom Workplace sponsored intermission. So you will enjoy that for a couple of minutes. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with more discussion on Alien Romulus on this Wednesday night. Don't go anywhere. It's Sleepless with Steve.
We do have to pay tribute over here. We do have to say a few words because this happened last Thursday. I want to say this celebrity passing, and I could tell the story about how I found out about it, but I kind of want to put the spotlight on the man himself. Jerry Springer passed away at the age of 79 in Evanston. Died in Evanston, Illinois. Very popular, sort of a outlying Chicago neighborhood. I tell you, Jerry Springer, first things first, on the Mount Rushmore of things to keep you company while you're sick as a kid, it's Jerry Springer, it's PBS Kids, I'm not going to name a specific show, but it's Jerry Springer, PBS Kids, Maury, and Price is Right. Is that not the Mount Rushmore of things that you watch when you're sick?
Yeah, that's it. Specifically Price is Right, because it's so hype, and it makes you feel better just by osmosis.
And I always loved like daytime television because there's ever since I was a kid, there was always something fascinating about like watching TV that I could not watch because I was always in school. So it was like almost like a weird forbidden fruit kind of thing. But Jerry Springer did pass away though last week at the age of 79. He passed away of pancreatic cancer, actually. He was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer a few months ago, died very quietly again in Evanston, excuse me. And obviously known for the Jerry Springer Show, the very controversial trash TV tabloid talk show, whatever you want to call it, which I'll say this too. I've always kind of really admired Jerry Springer. I watched his show a lot as a kid, which probably explains a lot. But I've always admired him because of the fact that I feel like he reminds me, like, and now, especially now too, that I did pick this up on eBay actually last week, and I'm about 160 pages deep into it. His book Ringmaster. I've been reading this over the last week on my brand new couch. See how it all comes full circle. And he reminds me a ton of myself, though. He reminds me a lot of like sort of my ethos of like, oh, I want to try that. That sounds like fun. I'll go do that. He's got a very interesting life, and I'm reading in the book too. Like, I knew this, but he goes into a lot of great detail about how he was born during World War II. He was born in England, and he was born to parents that were Jewish and escaping the Holocaust, and they made it to America. And he talks about like coming to America, kind of getting like he's got a really good part in this book where he's talking about how kids used to pick on him and bully him because his clothes, like he had rags for clothes, and one of the neighborhood mothers told Jerry's mother as a kid that if she bought him a Yankees uniform, nobody beat him up, and then he never got beat up again once he started.
Back and better than ever after our Zoom workplace sponsored intermission. This is Sleepless with Steve live on YouTube. Gruesome Twosome in effect tonight. Got Joe Viso over here. We are talking Alien Romulus, and we're kind of going into the performances and stuff. Kaylee Spaney, I know we've talked a lot about like this year, and it's understandable this year kind of being the year of Glenn Powell. He's had numerous great roles this year. Hitman and Twisters, and obviously, you know, coming off of Top Gun Maverick, he's definitely been, you know, a guy whose star is ascending. We also need to talk about Kaylee Spaney too, because Kaylee Spaney's been on a tear recently as well. Movies that are a little bit smaller in scale and release, but no less impacting. I thought she was fantastic as Priscilla Presley in Priscilla last year, a movie I enjoyed more than Elvis. And then she was in Civil War earlier this year. And I thought she was tremendous in that as well, where she plays this young photojournalist. I think I remember reading, too, that she's in the next Knives Out movie, that she's going to be in the next Knives Out movie, which is coming, I think, next year.
And talking about, like, you know, just perfect time to be cast in that movie, because I really do feel like with each movie, she got more and more, like, interest growing into her as an actress. It's like, okay, you get really small film buffs going to go see Sofia Coppola's movie. I know we were just talking about her dad earlier. And then you have, like, you know, people who are into like A24 films, but also like it was like they're kind of like their big budget movie of the year, which was Civil War, and now you have this, which is like big franchise movie, and she's a part of it now, and one of the best parts about it.
Definitely. I think she does really great work here. I think she's a character who's like morals kind of change, and her confidence sort of builds throughout the movie, which I think is really interesting. I think that's a really cool thing to watch when they do that with characters. So I think she's written very well. And then also David Johnson. I'm not as familiar with his work. The one movie I did watch with him was kind of a rom-com set over the course of a day. It's called Rye Lane. It's on Hulu. He was very good in that movie. He's got like the Daniel Kaluuya effect with his eyes. I think he plays very empathetic in this movie too, to a great degree.
Okay.
And I think I think he juggles with his character. I think he's easily got the toughest performance in the movie to nail, but he juggles like conveying emotion with like robotic blankness.
Yeah.
Depending on what the scene demands. And I think that's really fascinating to watch.
I'm hoping this movie, I mean, like, I've been seeing nothing but love for him all online in his performance, along with Kaylee Spaney's as well. I can only hope that this helps him get more roles, because he's on IMDb, he only has 7 credits for stuff, and I'm just like, shit, all right, like, I thought, I was like, man, I want to see this guy in more things. What else has he been in? I'm like, oh, he's only been in 7 things. I'm like, wow. I'm like, and he's this good? I'm like, man, people, please get this guy in some more stuff, man. He is so good.
Yeah, he's terrific. He does really good work. I think these two play a kind of a believable brother-sister duo.
Yeah.
Kind of in a way, like more towards the story. But yeah, this movie definitely feels also too like the graduation of Alvarez as a director, because there's some really impressive staging going on here. Now, he's done that really well in past movies, but if you think about Evil Dead, if you think about Don't Breathe, those movies were on far smaller scales. They were pretty much confined to a singular setting that was pretty claustrophobic and small in the scope of a film. Where here he's got scenes that require you, or that are required to like stage through multiple sort of labyrinth like rooms in an unconventional setting. Take, for example, the scene when the face huggers finally come loose. There's some really great buildup with that, but then they scale like these tight hallways, and the way the camera follows them when they finally attack, I thought was brilliant. I thought it was really brilliantly done.
And here's the thing: we've never seen what the facehugger, I think, really does to a person at least on screen. You just see it wrap around them, and then at that point, you're like, okay, they're screwed. That's it. seeing the actual thing, like trying to, insert it into your mouth, I was like, that, Fede, thank you for taking, like, just be like, this is an R-rated movie. Let's just do it. Let's not bullshit here. But again, like, and this is just me kind of geeking out about this. I'm so glad he wasn't afraid to, keep exploring these creatures and do something unique with them. I like that they actually find ways on how to remove a face hugger or how to defeat face huggers. I was like, oh, this is actually like really cool because, like, I feel like so many times, like, you'll see this when you watch 3 and 4. They're so scared to do something different with these damn things because they're like, we don't want to piss off the fans, and it's just like, no, just have, write it out on a piece of paper. Go like, does that make sense? Okay, yeah. If we nitro freeze the tail, yeah, let's go. Let's just do that. But one of my favorite other parts of this movie is like, man, he does such a good job. Because I talked about how the facehuggers are the star of the show, but the xenomorph itself is so damn intimidating, man. Not only is the look of it really good with how practical it looks, I love the fact that Fede was like, I'm going to show you we're not going to, this thing is, because they always say, oh, it's highly intelligent, it's the most intelligent creature. And, about like, when it first shows up, you're wondering, like, the hell is taking this thing so long? Why isn't it like not trying to hunt these people? And then you find out it's been doing all this stuff behind the scenes. And you're just like, oh, you guys are more screwed than I thought. Again, he just did such a great job. Him and his writer did such a great job at taking what was established in, the original and even Aliens and just expanding on it and doing their own thing with it, man. I appreciate it so much that they did that.
And it has callbacks. I mean, stylistically, it's probably the most similar to the original Alien
yes.
of at least any Alien sequel that I've seen, and I think you tend to agree, having seen them all. So it's stylistically very similar to the original. The one I think point of divisiveness was bringing back Ian Holmes' character. Was bringing back Ash in the original film. How did you feel about that?
So I've been riding this movie high. But there are moments of low for me that made me kind of go, this does feel like Ridley Scott or the studio had to interject and be like, no, but we got to make it all connect in some sort of way. I didn't like the utilization of him in this movie. I didn't like him being the character of Rook because it kind of ruined 2 things for me. One, it pulls me out of the film every time I see him on screen. I don't think it looks that convincing. But 2, we know Ash is not a trustworthy person in the first film. Because of the first film. So because they use him again in this movie, from the get-go, I'm like, you can't trust this guy. He's like Ash, when it's like, all I thought to myself was, if you would have done a different synth, or if you want to get really creative, it could have been another Andy, and like, just kind of play with that. I really think you could have done something more interesting if it was a whole different person, and they were the ones to be like, oh, hey, yeah, no, you could trust me. You just got to go to this sector. You have to get this vial and all this other stuff and like everything. But like from the get-go, I'm like, he's going to betray them in the end. Like, and it's so obvious, like, because they reveal it so early on too with his character. But it's like, wow, you really actually could have played up the mystery of this guy. And you didn't have to use, like, a dead actor that died in 2020. Like, and you're pulling me out of the movie every time I see him because, damn, it is not convincing at all. It is very Uncanny Valley. It is like Rogue One levels with the guy that played Grand Mark Tarkin or whatever his name is in Star Wars. The actor that played that character. It's so noticeable and it's distracting.
Yeah, and it's interesting. And now we're in the era of like AI and things like that. And I wonder if any of that contributed to bringing him back in this movie.
Yeah,
I can understand if they're very tight-lipped about it, if they did use that kind of thing. But like we're in this era now where, all these instances are very divisive in general. But now you have like with AI coming into the picture. And, studios are going to understandably want to experiment with this. And if they get the okay from the estate of a dead actor, what's to stop them?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What's to stop them from doing that? That's why I think, and I know Nick Cage, this is a little off base here, but excuse me. I think Nick Cage, though, I think he's one of them. I know. I think Keanu's another one who said that, like, when he dies, like, he does not want to be utilized in anything, like, after he's gone. And I wonder if, like, in the coming years, you're going to see, like, these not NDAs. They're going to have to come up with a word, like a term for it or a form for it that these actors can sign that like prohibits anybody
I'm
from
surprised
using their likeness.
And maybe because like Dom's our lawyer of the Sleepless with Steve thing.
Very much.
I'm surprised it wasn't talked about in the most recent strikes for actors. That like being utilized for stuff like this, and like whether your estate like needs to give permission, or like if you just want to be excluded from all future things, your estate doesn't even have a word for it. If you want to sign something, I'm surprised it was something that was not brought up with the heavy use of AI and scanning people in and whatnot. Yeah, because like we think about like of course you have to think back to what the actual strike for the Actors Guild was. People think it's for the big names like Nicolas Cage and everything like you just named. But no, it's really more for the smaller people and like people who are trying to make their big break and are just part of this guild trying to do so. Yeah, man. But circling back to Alien, my problems with this movie do kind of stem from what's his name? The character of Rook being the fact that it's literally Ash and everything, and again doesn't look that great. But the third act, I do think. There's a lot of callbacks during that part to previous films. They literally stopped the movie to say an infamous line from Aliens, and I kind of just went like, okay, I mean, maybe people like this, maybe people are having fun with this. I'm like, I kind of felt like that was out of place, and in context, it really doesn't make any sense for that character to say it to that thing. But okay. Now I did enjoy the actual climax. I've seen people be kind of split on that, and I'm wondering how you feel about that, because the climax does something that is from another Alien movie, and I was actually shocked they were like bringing that back, because I was like, wow, like you're bringing this from one of the most hated Alien movies. But I actually thought Fede did it pretty well, and he actually executed it way better than I initially thought once the climax started.
I think speaking more broadly here, like that the biggest criticism I have for Romulus is that I don't like, and we talked about how I think Alvarez had a lot of creative control on this, and I believe it does, and I think it shows. But there's times, especially at the end, where it doesn't know when to cease with the callbacks and sort of blaze its own trail. And I think that's the only thing handicapping this movie from being truly great.
Yeah,
is that like you mentioned the line of dialogue, like it feels misplaced, it feels tacked on. It's one of those things where like the movie itself, I think what saves it is that until that point where some of the more divisive elements kick in the third act, it's built up enough equity with you as a viewer that it can weather those things. But if it was a lesser movie, I think that's when it really starts to fall apart. So I think it goes back to like Alvarez at least having, his penchant for body horror and like grim styling still being fully intact, that when those elements do show up, like they might not be great, but they don't ruin or handicap the movie too severely.
No, they really don't. Like they pulled me out of the movie, and it's like, dude, I was riding high on this thing, and it sucks when that happens because those moments did feel really low for me. But I'm not discouraging anybody from saying like this is still a really damn good movie, and I don't want anybody to think that. I'm not saying it isn't.
Yeah, and the thing, again, if we'll parlay into closing thoughts here, I think the one thing, one of the things that's really nice about this, I mentioned this in the beginning, is that you really don't need to be a scholar of the galaxies or like versed in the mythology of xenomorphs or face huggers in order to really appreciate this movie for what it does. And I think that's where one of its strongest elements lies, is that Alvarez and Segues did a tremendous job of making sure that this movie could function as like a movie that doesn't have too intense of a plot. It's got enough of a plot. It's structured like a horror movie. And then it has enough time for like characters to grow, the mythology of the face huggers to sort of reveal themselves without getting in the way of like a ton of other like existential business or sort of like asking questions it doesn't intend to answer and things like that I think stopped Prometheus from being great, or like really stalled my enjoyment of Prometheus in that way. And then you couple that with like Kaylee Spaney and David Johnson doing really fine work here. And then also too, the other individual I want to mention is Gallo Olivares on cinematography. Hell of a job here. Hell of a job with, again, I love the stuff on Jackson. I love the stuff on the planet, and I mean, it's not to say the stuff on Romulus and Remus isn't great, because it very much is. It's just staged very differently. But like a lot of the cinematographical work on Jackson and aboard the spacecraft, they're two distinctly different settings, and they're utilized beautifully. And Alvarez, I think, really shines here too as the cinematographer. So overall, for me, it's a solid 3 out of 4 stars. And what's cool too is, like, even just gauging the reception on this movie, this seems to be the most liked of the most recent 3 from what I've read. Like, Covenant and Prometheus were both very divisive. Prometheus had a lot of its defenders and everything like that, and I'm by no means negative on it. But Romulus seems to be the crowd pleaser that I think this series really needed to continue to have the fan interest after so many ups and downs. And I think what you get here really is a damn well made movie by a guy whose even directorial maturation can be gauged in Fede Alvarez.
Oh, I thought you were about to go into your star rating. That's why I was.
I said 3 out of 4.
I didn't hear you. My bad. I didn't hear you.
You're good.
Yeah, man. So overall for me, this is similar to what you were kind of closing there with. This is kind of a return to basics for the franchise, but in a good way, because it was deeply needed, I think, to win people back over, but also just look back at what made these movies special. It's a return to the basics, but Fede Alvarez sprinkles this movie with his own signature throughout the whole thing. And I think that's what helps make it shine through and makes it feel so refreshing. Despite having the moments of connecting back to the previous films that I honestly did feel like, they kind of are very distracting and are pulling me out of the movie. Because it's just like, man, you're doing so great doing your own thing. Why even bother doing this? I still had a great time watching this. And over the summer, there's been plenty of movies I've walked out of, and I'm like, man, I love that, and I want to go see that again, or I really enjoyed that, I want to go see it again. And I've yet to go see, I haven't seen Deadpool Wolverine a second time. I didn't see Twisters a second time yet, and I really want to. Same with Quiet Place. I wanted to check out that a second time, because I just had so much fun watching those movies. I saw this movie last Thursday, and immediately I texted a friend. I'm like, yo, $5 Tuesday, do you want to go see this again? Because over the weekend, I started liking it a lot more the longer it sat with me. And I was like, damn, I kind of want to give it another viewing. So I went to go see it last night, and I liked it even more. And I want to... I'm seeing it next Tuesday. Sorry. I'm seeing it next Tuesday, and I'm hoping I'm going to like it even more. And we'll see where it ends up for me. But right now, it is also 3 out of 4 stars. It's like an asterisk next to it because it can easily get that half mark. But yeah, man, I can't wait, because this to me, I think we'll probably get a sequel because of how much this movie made money over the weekend, being 100 million worldwide, which I'm happy for Fede. Like, good for you, man. I just don't want them to just mess it up again. And I know, like, he tweeted out to Dan Trachtenberg about making an AVP movie. And as cool as that might sound, for someone like me, it's like, let's keep the two separate for a little bit longer. Let them do their own thing for a little bit longer before we try to mesh them back together for once. But yeah, for me, 3 out of 4 stars.
I agree with you on that last point too. Like, let's pump the brakes on welcoming Alien to the Monsterverse or something cockamamie that they're probably gonna try.
Yeah, I love both those guys. They're two franchises I love and everything. Yeah. But I don't need another Alien vs. Predator right now. There's no need for it. I just got a good Predator movie, and I got a good Alien movie. Give me another one of each, please.
No, and it's true, too, because, like, I mean, honestly, you hate to even think about it, but no, like, it's about that time where they would reconsider it, because Shane Black had his Predator movie, then they had Prey. Then they had Prey, which did very well, which I thought they dropped the ball on. I thought Prey could have went to theaters.
It should have. I thought Prey, and this originally was supposed to go to streaming as well.
It was, yeah. I was shocked to learn too. I was shocked to learn that for this. You know what I mean? But I think it'll stick around for a few more weeks in theaters. I think it's definitely the positive buzz with this is absolutely, I believe, going to carry it. And it led to a very good review on the show as well. Yeah. Next week, I am not here. Got a couple of midweek concerts next week, so I'm out next week. I'm leaving these guys to tackle The Crow, which Catherine and I are in the middle of, she's seen them all. I haven't. I saw the first one many years ago when I was in college, I believe. And so we rewatched that one and the second one last night, City of Angels. So tonight is The Crow Salvation, I believe it's called. So
I didn't even know there is a third film. I've never seen any of the Crow films, by the way.
There's 4.
Yeah.
There's 4 OGs, and then there's this new one with Bill Skarsgård, which I'm still kind of surprised even got made in its own way. You know what I mean?
I am too. Like I said, I've never seen the original, but like knowing the legacy that movie has and just seeing how the sequels turned out, I'm like, I'm surprised you guys even wanted to touch this franchise again after how things have been turning out with it. I've seen Dark City, though. I know that's not related to The Crow, but it's the same director and everything, and I thought like stylistically that movie is amazing. And everybody's told me if you love the style and look of Dark City, you'll love The Crow. And I'm like, okay, maybe one day.
The original Crow absolutely holds up. It's so good. I think I liked it even more watching it again. It's so good. And I mean, it's inescapable, the death of Brandon Lee, but like it gives like some of his monologues in the movie about death and revenge and legacy, like they're given more poignance given what happened on set and everything. Like it's just a beautiful looking movie and how dark it is. And I mean, honestly, like it's weird to say, but like if Brandon Lee didn't die on the set of that movie, I feel like The Crow would be more, and it is remembered for this, but you bring up The Crow and everybody immediately remembers the Brandon Lee tragedy. But I think if Lee hadn't died in such a freak way, it would be first remembered as a movie that like really took like that Batman Tim Burton style and made it something even grimmer and more adult and paved the way for things like Sin City.
I've heard people say like, man, when you look at that film and then you go watch something like The Dark Knight, even what Snyder even did with Batman, you notice a lot of similarities in terms of like, you know, what that movie did with its just look of the film and just like, you know, overall like the tone of it and everything. Like it was used in a lot of later films. It very much was something that like kind of inspired a lot of filmmakers with their later movies.
No doubt. Let's hope this new one's at least watchable. That's for you two to litigate. I will litigate it on stevepulaski.com. You guys are running the show next week, you and Dom. So I will be back the first week of September, though. So yeah, and don't get it twisted already. Next weekend is Labor Day weekend because Labor Day is ass early this year. It's the 2nd of September. It's the 2nd of September.
I mean, it'd be nice to have a 3-day weekend.
I noticed it on my work calendar. I'm like, shit, I wasn't expecting it till like the 6th, but it's just the way that the month falls, you know? So yeah, Labor Day weekend's next weekend, FYI. So remember, keep that in mind too. But that's our show. That's our show tonight. Gruesome Twosome did really well, and we're ending on time as well. Very nice, despite going on a 15-minute tangent about film distribution and passion projects to start the show off. Really fun show. I appreciate you, Joe, for running it like you always do. And you two will be back next week to talk The Crow. I will see you in 2 weeks. Until then, for Joe Viso, Dominic Guanzon, unseen but still beloved, and yours truly, this has been Sleepless with Steve.